I want you to imagine you're the kind of weirdo that likes the idea of a bicycle. The fresh air, the exercise, the environmental friendliness. But you also occasionally want to haul a passenger. You want to haul some cargo. You want some weather shielding. You want the ability to go faster than 15 miles an hour. And you want to needlessly spend $50,000. Boy, do I have the vehicle for you.
It's called the Twike. It's an electric car. You can pedal it, and it's terrifying. Oh, God.
This is my Twike. I paid actual money for this. And yes, it is really called Twike. Says so right here. It's a dumb sounding name until you understand that it's a combination of twin and bike. And once you understand that, it's still a dumb sounding name. Twike calls this a human electric hybrid, which is silly because that also perfectly describes an e-bike. In the back, between the rear wheels, is an asynchronous AC induction motor driving the rear wheels through a single-speed gear reduction and a differential. Up front are two sets of pedals, one for the driver, one for the passenger. No one's allowed to be dead weight in the Twike. They also drive the rear wheels through a 5-speed chain drive gearbox with freewheel like a bicycle. Like I said, it's a human electric hybrid in the exact same way an e-bike is a human electric hybrid, but with the added complication of reverse. If you're wondering if the pedals are back-driven when it's in reverse, the answer is no. In reverse or neutral, yes, it has neutral, the pedals are disengaged. Oh boy, all right. Right leg in, step on the bar, lean back, brace yourself, fall in, and then
Inside the Twike. I want you to imagine how you think this drives. Now throw all that out the window, you're wrong. It's far more terrifying than that. To demonstrate, I'm just going to take you on a drive with me. It is in drive. Pedals are engaged now. Just start moving forward. That's 10 miles an hour. $20, $25, $30.
Twike, the company, was formed in Switzerland in 1992, but the story of Twike goes back to 1986, when the first Twike was built by a group of Swiss students for the World Expo in Vancouver. That first Twike, while it looked similar to this one, was basically just a covered tricycle. It didn't have a motor and it was just a one-off prototype thing. The Twike 2 came about 5 years later in 1991. It did have a motor to assist with your pathetic pedaling. Interestingly, the pedaling in the Twike 2 was done through a belt drive CVT. The Twike 2, like the original Twike, was also just a one-off prototype thing, but it was built to develop the concept into something more daily usable and to gather interest from investors. In 1992, the company Twike was formed, and in 1995, they finally began producing a Twike for people to buy, the Twike 3. This is the Twike 3. And look, I understand why it's called the 3, but don't you think it's a little confusing this is Twike's first model? The Twike originated from and was originally built in Switzerland. In '98, a German arm was set up, and in 2002, production moved completely to Germany, where they are still produced to this day in Rosenthal, Germany. Because mine is a '98 model, that means mine was built in Switzerland, I think? And by the way, if you're wondering, twin bike in German would be Zwillingsrad. Twike is a silly name, but I prefer it to Zwillingsrad. Oh, and by the way, this is fully street legal, not as a low-speed vehicle, as a regular auto cycle, according to the state of Missouri.
Peak power is 9 kilowatts, that's 12 horsepower, although nominal power is only 3 kilowatts, 4 horsepower, which isn't a lot, but also you can pedal it. And my feet are slightly too big for the pedals.
Twike claims an averagely trained rider can input 100 to 200 watts through your meat sticks. That number sounds high to me, but let's just go with it. If the motor is outputting its full 9 kilowatts and you're adding 200 watts through the pedals, you're contributing 2%. Pedaling the Twike is a bit like being a toddler and helping your mom bake a cake. You feel like you're helping.
Granted, that motor is rarely, if ever, going to output the full 9 kilowatts. So you're generally going to be making a bigger difference than just 2%, but not by much. The main reason this has pedals isn't so you can add range to the thing, it's to give you exercise. And it does that very well. And as I found out the first time I took this out on a public road, you get cardio not just from the pedals, but also from the imminent fear of death.
Hello, this video is sponsored by Factor. Because the Twike is the Twike, I've dragged it out here to what can not inaccurately be described as the middle of nowhere, so I don't have to battle things like traffic or other people. And to show you just how remote this location is, we're going to have a street picnic. Factor meals are never frozen and delivered straight to your door in a refrigerated box. All you have to do is pick your meal, in my case, herb encrusted chicken, stab the film to vent it, and microwave for 2 minutes. As I always say, these Factor meals are delicious, and my favorite are the chicken breast meals, which I don't know how they mass produce chicken breast meals, have them be cooked in the microwave, and have them come out better than I could do it myself, but they do, and it's almost magical. This herb encrusted chicken is some of my favorite. There's no road traffic right now, but there is a plane flying directly overhead. You can probably hear it. Anyway, if you want to try Factor for yourself, and I highly recommend you do, go to Factor75.com and use code AgingWheels50 at checkout for 50% off your first box. You won't regret it. The controls in the Twike are not like anything you've ever seen before. Unless you've seen another Twike, obviously. Steering is done with this tiller in between the two seats. And you can change the amount of steering resistance through this adjustive damper right here in the front of the Twike. That's all the way loose, which is not how I prefer it.
The previous owner told me that the steering can get a little light and twitchy at high speeds. He lied to me. It's light and twitchy at every speed. This is the single most terrifying part of the Twike. Look at this. I'm barely moving the steering input. I feel like a sneeze could end my life right now.
At the base of the steering tiller is a steering lock for security, I guess. This rocker switch on the back of the steering tiller is how you activate the stupid sounding blinkers. On the front of the tiller are these two buttons. This is your throttle and this is your regen braking, and yes, it has regenerative braking.
The regen is really good too. Step 1, step 2, and it can bring it to a full stop.
Each one of these buttons is a two-step button, much like the shutter button on a camera. That's all the granularity you get with your throttle and regen controls.
It has cruise control. To engage cruise control, you just double tap the throttle button and cruise control is engaged. What's funny about this to me is that it has a two-step throttle. You have low and high, that's it. The cruise control is the only way to get an infinitely variable throttle, and the steering is still way too twitchy for me to let go of it. Good God.
To my left is the parking brake. Up is off, down is on. You're meant to hold on to these two inputs while you're driving the thing. There's 3 switches on the back of this: brights, wipers, and horn.
Here's the horn. Oh God. Is it in here with me?
And on the side of this handle is the shifter for the 5-speed bicycle gearbox. You likely heard the clicking as I'm driving this thing along. That's the braking pawl. To activate the brakes in the Twike, you backpedal like a children's bike. When you pedal backwards, you engage the braking pawl, which pushes on the brake master cylinder. It has regular hydraulic brakes, just an unusual way to use them. The front brake is a disc, and the 2 rear brakes are tiny little drum brakes. And then in the middle, there's the gauge pot. At the top is your speedometer. It's just a row of LEDs with increments of 5 miles per hour. Not very granular, but there's a secondary digital speed readout in the screen below. And yes, it is in miles per hour. I know it says kilometers per hour, but the sticker is missing. Below that are various lights that indicate various things, and 5 switches. They are power, window defrost. Yes, it has a window defroster, but more on that in a bit. Hazard lights, fog lights, which are rear-only fog lights, and your headlight switch. And at the bottom is the Twike's trip computer. It shows you various things like battery temperature, voltage, current draw, in and out, your digital speed. I believe it can show you consumption, but I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. And I haven't played with it too much, but there's a few things that I do know that I'd like to point out. The reverse and forward membrane buttons at the top of the screen don't do anything. When you turn it on, it says welcome, Twike 3. And when you turn it off, it says bye-bye. How cute. In the middle between the seats is the drive direction selector lever. This is drive, this is neutral, and this is reverse. Drive is, well, drive. Neutral disengages the pedals, but you can still drive the Twike forward using the motor, and reverse is, well, reverse. Just ahead of that is the emergency stop switch. This doesn't isolate the high voltage system like you would think. That key that's down there that you can't really see did that job, but I've since disabled that key because it didn't work reliably, and that's something you need from a high voltage disconnect button.
Oh yeah, feel the burn. I do mean it. It burns.
These are the Twike seats. Very basic. They sit in kind of a reclined position. They tilt forward and they sit on a rail so you can slide them forward and backward. And to adjust the height, you pivot this asymmetric machine plastic block the seat sits on. That's your height adjustment. By the way, this lovely mahogany shelf in the back, that's not a factory Twike piece. From factory, there's a plastic piece of garbage that sits back here. I made this and frankly overdid it. Also not factory is that charger. That's something I added as well. In the back we have, well, the back. This rear window is glued in. I know it might look like there's some sort of hatch or some way to access the inside of the Twike from back here, but no, it's glued in. This light and this light is original. The others are aftermarket, replaced by some previous owner. This is your rear fog light, this is your reverse fog light, and these are various turn signals, brake lights, running lights, etc. And no, it did not originally come with this charge port. This is something I added. J1772 did not exist in 1998 when this Twike was built. You might look at this bullet-shaped car bicycle thing with its wheel skirts and its underbody aero shielding and think, that must be very aerodynamic. Well, it isn't. The frontal area is very small, but the drag coefficient is only 0.33. For reference, a vehicle with a lower drag coefficient of 0.30 is a Rivian.
The Twike does not have a heater. Now, Twike would argue you don't need a heater because you're pedaling and generating your own body heat, which, true. I'm sweating in here and it's 35 degrees outside. But also, a heater in this wouldn't make any sense. The battery capacity is not very much, and any amount of heat in here would drain a significant amount of energy from the small available capacity. But it does have window defrosters in the form of 2 hair dryers.
Here they are. Are they literal hair dryers? That I don't know. They look like travel-sized hair dryers. They're Braun branded, and they're designed to run off 230 volts AC, which is standard house voltage in Europe, where this thing was built. And they must be wired in series because they're designed to run off 230 volts AC, but they're being run directly off the high voltage battery, which is 400 volts DC. Yes, that's right. This tiny thing has a 400 volt battery. Originally, this would have had a nickel cadmium battery pack. I don't know what the capacity of that original pack was, but the previous owner tells me it was very heavy and the range was about 20 miles. At some point in the past, the previous owner purchased the factory lithium upgrade from Twike. Here's one of the modules of the 7. That factory lithium upgrade cost him $7,000 and netted him a whopping 3.5 kilowatt hours. Again, for $7,000. The factory lithium upgrade from Twike was made of 7 of these modules in series, about 350 volts nominal. It's made of 18650s, and there's no individual cell monitoring. If you know what those words mean, you'll know how frightening that is. Powering this now is a battery pack I built myself. 358 volts nominal, about 402 volts fully charged, 9.3 kilowatt hours gross, and the pack I built does have individual cell monitoring and other safety features to reduce the risk of it, catching fire while charging. The video detailing that new battery pack and all the other work I've done to this stupid thing is coming soon, so watch out for that.
Top speed of this thing is about 50 miles an hour, maybe if you can get it up that fast. It slows down dramatically up hills, and at no point does it ever feel stable. The previous owner of this thing told me that one time, downhill, he got it up to 65 miles per hour. Before I have driven this thing, I thought it would be funny if I took this on the highway for the video, but after having driven this thing, no way am I ever taking this on the highway. I trailered it out here to the middle of nowhere so that I wouldn't have to deal with any traffic whatsoever. I'd rather drive this in the river than on the highway.
Range is, I don't know. Twike claims this can achieve an efficiency of 8 to 15 miles per kilowatt hour. I find that hard to believe, but if those numbers are correct, then the battery pack I built can manage a range of 70 to 135 miles. But again, I don't believe it. I'm just going to call it 50 miles and be happy with it. I would do a range test, but that sounds exhausting.
I said the top speed is 50 miles an hour, but I've only seen that downhill. Flat and level ground, it seems to peg at about 40, which, that's plenty fast enough.
The modern day Twike 3, which is almost entirely the same as this one built 26 years ago, is available with 4 different battery options: 7, 11, 14, and 18 kilowatt hours, all lithium ion. And Twike claims that max battery of 18 kilowatt hours can achieve a max range of 250 miles. Now, I think that's far too long to spend in this plastic exercise repository, but you do you.
This feels utterly pointless to be pedaling this fast. Okay, we're done with that. Oh my God.
Speaking of the new Twike 3, I haven't yet told you how ludicrously, insanely expensive the new Twike 3 is. According to Twike's website, the new Twike 3 starts at, including 19% VAT, $37,000 and goes up to $54,000 for a Twike 3. And now I can tell you I paid $5,000 for this one with a dead battery and it won't sound expensive anymore. Construction. The frame of the Twike is welded aluminum tube, like a bicycle, and the body is some sort of thermoplastic. Twike's website calls this Luron, which I've never heard of before. Likely to save weight. Wherever there doesn't absolutely need to be a frame, there is no frame. Two examples of that are, one, back here, the window is the upper structure of this. When I had the rear window out of this whole section was just floppy. There is a tube here though. Another example is here. There's an aluminum tube here and one on the opposite side of the Twike. The entire underbody loop is unsupported plastic. Because of that, when you step into the Twike, do not step onto the floor. If you do, there's a non-zero chance your foot will go through that floor. And if you did that to a Twike that someone paid $50,000 for, I'd imagine the owner would kill you on the spot.
It is quite a bit of fun. I am focusing on how scary it is, but once you take away the traffic and the other perils of the road, it becomes a lot of fun.
The canopy and the rear window are both polycarbonate, which is totally fine, but there's a windshield wiper up here, and polycarbonate scratches far too easily for this windshield wiper to ever be used. The canopy is lockable. The lock is right here, but you could just pop open the side windows, reach in, and open the canopy from the inside, so not the best security. On a related note, these side windows roll up and out of the way if you want fresh air in your Twike. This nose piece is removable. Behind it is the tow hook, so you have to unbolt the nose cone to access the tow hook. Tires are Pirelli motorcycle tires, and I just told you everything I know about them. If you don't want these, Twike now offers 135 width passenger car tires, which look a little weird because they come on steel wheels, but I imagine they're easier to find replacements for than these. Okay, now it's time to talk about some of the Twike's design flaws. I have not driven this all that much, and I've already found several things that are problematic. If you drive the Twike with the key in the steering tiller lock, it is possible to activate that lock and jam the steering while you're driving with your butt. Not only is it possible, I've done it twice now. Speaking of the tiller, it requires a little bit more space than is available to make hard left or right turns. If you have a passenger, you gotta be careful because you could bump up against them and not make your turn.
Cruise control is activated by double-clicking the throttle button. Why is that a problem? Because it has a throttle button. What happens when you try to modulate your speed and you only have a button? You end up double tapping it and unintentionally engaging cruise control all the time. I have not driven the Twike very much, and I've accidentally engaged cruise control at least 5 times now. At the beginning, I thought that the throttle was getting stuck, which really it kind of was.
The pedals sometimes get stuck, like they are right now, between the forward gear and the braking pawl. To unlock them from this position, you just have to pop it into neutral, which is not that big of a deal, but this happens like every time I make a 3-point turn. I don't know how many Twikes have been made, but given the ludicrous entry cost and the fact that you've never heard of it before, I'm gonna guess the production number is pretty low. Like I said, Twike is still around, and they're currently working on their next model, the Twike 5. As you might have guessed, the Twike 4 was a one-off prototype thing. It was actually a car designed to compete in the Automotive X Prize in 2010. The 5, an evolution of the 4, is supposed to be more of a real car with actual range, speed, capability, and all that. It still has 3 wheels, pedals, and no steering wheel, but it's much more of a real car than this 4-horsepower pedal bike. And because the 5 is a real car with real power, pedaling it will make even less of a difference than it does in this one.
Can you imagine what it would be like in the Twike 5 doing this pedaling dance on a highway? You would cause accidents. People would be staring at you so much.
And that's the Twike in a nutshell. It's a silly little thing. Now, like I said, I've done a lot of work to this thing. New battery, new BMS, new charger, new rear window. I re-glued the canopy. I built a new shelf for the back of it. I spent far too much money and time on this thing. And it's taken me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I bought this back in June and I thought, couple of weeks, I'll build a new battery. No, it's January now. I've been working on this for the past 4 months, off and on. It's what I've been working on. This stupid little exercise suppository. That's okay, it's much more functional now, and the next owner is going to love it. I don't know who I'm going to find to buy it. Someone probably, hopefully. Anyway, Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, which is all the work that I've done to this Twike, which will be around in a week or two after this one. Bye.